It started as a normal morning in Świętochłowice, a quiet town in southern Poland, where nothing much ever happens. The street outside was waking up, trams clattering, dogs barking, a woman watering her plants. But on the third floor of a crumbling apartment block, something ancient and horrifying was about to surface. When police arrived after a neighbor reported strange moans from behind a locked door, they expected a routine welfare check. Instead, what they found would shake the entire nation. A woman, pale as paper, eyes sunken, body barely clinging to life. She had been locked inside that room since 1998 by her own parents. This isn't just another crime story. It's a chilling reminder that monsters sometimes hide behind the word family. Stay with us to the end, because what you'll hear next could change the way you look at the people living right next door. It was the summer of 2025 in Świętochłowice, a fading industrial town in southern Poland.
Most of the buildings dated back to the communist era. Gray, weary, and silent. Life there moved slowly, almost forgetfully. But that quiet afternoon in July, the silence broke. At 2:37 p.m., the local police received a call from an elderly neighbor reporting a strange noise, like someone crying, from an apartment that no one had entered in years. Officers arrived expecting neglect, maybe a medical emergency. Instead, they found a padlocked bedroom sealed with boards, windows covered in foil to block out the light. When they forced it open, the stench hit first. Mold, rot, and something human. Lying on a rusted iron bed was a 42-year-old woman. Skeletal and trembling, her skin translucent, her eyes wild and afraid. Her name was Mirella. She had last been seen in 1998, when she was 15. Her disappearance had long been forgotten. The neighbors believed she had moved away. No one had imagined she had been there all along, imprisoned in that same apartment by her own parents.
The couple, now frail in their 70s, watched in silence as officers carried their daughter out on a stretcher. For 27 years, they had kept her hidden, feeding her scraps, never allowing her to step outside. They said they were protecting her from the world. Within hours, the story spread across Poland, then across Europe. How could a woman vanish for nearly 3 decades inside her childhood home without anyone noticing? The answer would reveal not only the cruelty of 2 parents, but the blindness of an entire community that never asked the right questions. The call came in just after 2:30 p.m. A neighbor, an old woman who lived directly below apartment 3B, told the dispatcher she had heard a soft crying, like a woman whispering for help. Officers Tomasz Kurek and Eliza Nowak were dispatched, thinking it was another welfare check. Świętochłowice was full of aging tenants. Lonely deaths weren't rare. When they knocked, no one answered. The air in the hallway was thick with mildew. The old door had 2 locks and a heavy chain. Eliza tried the handle. It was sealed from the inside. Tomasz signaled maintenance to bring a crowbar. The metal screeched as the frame gave way. The smell hit first. Rot, sweat, and something older, like time itself had been trapped and left to spoil. The apartment was silent except for the low hum of a refrigerator from another decade. Every window had been covered with foil and cardboard, blocking out the light. They moved cautiously toward a single closed door at the end of the corridor. Someone had hammered wooden planks across it, then nailed them shut. When the officers pried them off and forced the door open, what lay beyond froze them where they stood. Inside was a small room barely larger than a prison cell. A single iron bed stood in the corner, its frame rusted, and its mattress sagging in the middle. On it lay a woman, her body reduced to bone and shadow. Her hair was tangled, her skin pale gray, lips cracked and trembling. She turned her head weakly toward the light, pupils shrinking, as if she hadn't seen daylight in decades. "Madam, can you hear me?" Eliza knelt beside her. The woman's lips moved. No sound came. She tried again, this time a rasp. "Mirella." Eliza's heart jolted. That name, she knew it. It was in the cold case database. The girl who had vanished in 1998, never found. On a small nightstand sat a bowl of half-eaten soup, now hardened into crust. A cracked mirror leaned against the wall, reflecting nothing but the dim bulb overhead. Next to it, an old calendar, May 1998. 27 years had passed, but the room had never moved forward. The officers realized the impossible truth. Mirella had not vanished into the world. She had been here all along, trapped within these four walls, hidden in plain sight by the very people who once promised to protect her. As paramedics rushed in, Tomasz whispered the words that would soon echo across Poland. "She was never missing. We just stopped looking." By dawn the next morning, the news had already spread through Świętokłowice like wildfire. Satellite vans crowded the narrow street, reporters shouting questions at every uniform they could spot. The old gray building stood silent, its windows sealed, its secrets finally broken open. At the hospital in Katowice, doctors worked to stabilize Mirella. She weighed barely 36 kilograms. Her muscles were wasted, her legs twisted from years of immobility. When they tried to draw blood, her veins collapsed. "It's like she's been underground," one nurse whispered. Detectives pulled out the dusty files. Mirella K. reported missing May 12, 1998. 15 years old, last seen walking home from school. The case had gone cold within months. Her parents told everyone she had gone to live with an aunt in Warsaw. No one questioned it. No one checked. The aunt never existed. Neighbors now struggled to piece together the years. "I remember her laughter," said Mr. Videk, who lived next door in the late 90s. One day she was gone. They said she ran away. Another recalled hearing faint music or humming through the wall at night, but assumed it was the TV. The blinds were always drawn. The couple rarely spoke. They paid rent on time, kept to themselves, model tenants of indifference. Inside the apartment, investigators cataloged everything. Stacks of expired canned food, old photo albums with the girl's face cut out, a child's dress folded neatly in a drawer. In the corner, behind an armoire, they found a faded school backpack, still containing notebooks filled with doodles and the words, "I will go out someday." Hidden beneath the mattress was a single sheet of paper, yellowed with age. It read in shaky handwriting, "They said I was sick, that outside people would hurt me. I don't think that's true anymore." The note was dated 2009, proof that Mirella had remained conscious, aware, and desperately questioning her reality long after the world had forgotten her. For investigators, it was the moment the case transformed from a family tragedy into a horror of endurance. This was no accident, no misunderstanding. It was deliberate, organized imprisonment that spanned nearly 3 decades, and the question that haunted every officer on the case was simple. How could no one notice? 2 days after the rescue, investigators returned to apartment 3B with forensic teams and psychologists. The unit had been sealed off, yet the air still carried that damp, sweet odor of decay. They began to strip away the layers of the room like peeling skin from a wound, each discovery worse than the last. Behind the wardrobe, they found a small camera wired to a crude monitor in the parents' bedroom. The signal was dead, but its purpose was clear. They had been watching her.
Across the hallway, the parents' living space was oddly normal. Clean dishes, framed wedding photos, and a small shrine with candles. It looked like 2 worlds divided by 1 door, a home and a prison. When questioned, the father sat quietly, hands clasped. "She was fragile," he said in Polish, voice trembling. "We just wanted to keep her safe. The world outside is cruel." His wife nodded through tears, murmuring prayers under her breath. Their words sounded like guilt, but also conviction. On a desk near their room, detectives found dozens of unsent letters addressed to "My sweet girl." The handwriting was shaky, obsessive. One read, "I can't let you go out there. They will take you from me. Forgive me, daughter. You don't understand what I see when I dream." A forensic analyst uncovered something more disturbing. A small notebook written in the father's hand, listing daily rules. No window open, no talk, no noise after 10. He had drawn diagrams of locks and ventilation grids, notes about how to keep the room soundproof. Psychiatrists later diagnosed both parents with a shared delusional disorder, folie à deux. Over years, their paranoia grew into belief that their daughter was unsafe in the outside world. To save her, they built a cage within their own home. Among the evidence, one thing stood out. A tiny pink hair clip, still on the dresser where Mirella had left it 27 years earlier. Dust-covered, untouched, perfectly still. Like time had stopped the moment they decided she would never leave again. The silence of that apartment told a story no confession ever could. Within a week, the case had exploded across Poland. Newspapers called it the Sven-Tuchwowice daughter case. Others compared it to Austria's Joseph Fritzl horror. The Ministry of Interior ordered a full review of all missing persons files dating back to the 1990s. Detective Novak led the inquiry. She pored through decades of forgotten paperwork, census forms, hospital registries, school records. What she found was infuriating. Mirella's file had been marked inactive in 2003, after her parents confirmed she was living abroad. No follow-up, no home visit, no verification. Bureaucracy had erased her existence. As news broke, neighbors swore they never suspected a thing. Yet small signs had been there all along. A postal worker remembered hearing faint singing behind the door one winter and being told by the mother, "That's just the TV." A plumber once noticed a padlock on the inside of a door but dismissed it. "Old people do weird things," he said. In a storage closet, forensic techs discovered a series of old VHS tapes labeled Family. Most were blank, but one, dated 2001, contained grainy footage. Mirella, seated on the bed, staring at the camera as a man's voice told her to smile. She didn't. She looked directly into the lens and whispered, "Please stop."
That recording became the cornerstone of the prosecution's case, proving beyond doubt that she had been alive, aware, and imprisoned. The parents were taken into custody under heavy guard. During psychiatric evaluation, the father insisted he had saved her from a world full of sickness and sin. The mother sat beside him, repeating, "We did nothing wrong." The revelation tore through Poland's conscience. Commentators asked how an entire neighborhood, a city, even a country, could allow a person to vanish within four walls. Social media filled with outrage. If this happened here, it could happen anywhere. Meanwhile, Mirella's recovery began, under police protection. Doctors said she still flinched at sudden light or loud voices. When asked what she feared most, she whispered one word that silenced the room: going home. The trial began in December 2025 at the Regional Court of Katowice.
By then, the case had become a national obsession. Television stations ran countdowns. Crowds gathered outside the courthouse every morning holding candles and photos of Mirella from her youth. She never attended the hearings. Doctors said she wasn't ready to face them, the people who had stolen her life. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was heavy with disbelief. The father, Stanislav K., now 76, sat in a wheelchair, his face drawn and ghostly. Beside him, his wife, Helena, clutched a rosary so tightly her knuckles bled. They faced charges of unlawful imprisonment, psychological and physical abuse, and falsifying government records. When the prosecutor displayed the 2001 videotape, the moment Mirella looked into the camera and said, "Please stop," the entire courtroom went silent. Some jurors turned away. One began to cry. During testimony, the father spoke first. His voice trembled but carried an eerie calm. "The world outside is poisoned," he said in Polish. "People disappear. Children are taken. We only wanted to keep her safe. I built her a room where no one could hurt her." The prosecutor's reply cut through the room. "You built her a tomb, not a room." Helena broke down during cross-examination. She described years of routine, bringing food, cleaning the chamber, avoiding eye contact. "At first I thought we were helping her," she sobbed. "Then it became easier not to think at all." A psychiatric expert testified that both parents suffered from a shared delusional disorder, folie à deux, a madness transmitted and reinforced through isolation. But the court ruled that delusion did not excuse cruelty. They had chosen secrecy over sanity. Mini reveal number 1. In her written statement, Mirella revealed that she had occasionally been allowed to write notes for therapy, which her father later burned. She remembered counting footsteps in the hallway, memorizing the sound of passing trams, and dreaming of sunlight she no longer recognized. "I forgot the smell of rain," she wrote. "I thought maybe the world had ended." Mini reveal number 2. The investigation also found evidence that social services had twice visited the address, in 2005 and 2010, but recorded no irregularities. The officers who failed to inspect the locked room resigned before the trial began. After 6 weeks of testimony, the verdict came. The courtroom was packed beyond capacity. The judge's voice was solemn. "For 27 years you imprisoned your daughter, deprived her of freedom, health, and dignity.
The law of this court cannot restore her life, but it can mark the limits of humanity you have crossed. Stanislav K. was sentenced to 25 years in prison. Helena K. received 22 years, both to serve in a psychiatric supervised facility. Neither showed emotion as guards led them away. Outside, hundreds gathered in silence as the verdict was announced. Church bells tolled across the square, a gesture of mourning, not victory.
News anchors called it the day Poland faced its reflection. 2 months later, a journalist visited the rehabilitation center where Mirella was staying. She was learning to walk again, one shaky step at a time. When asked if she hated her parents, she shook her head slowly. "Hate keeps you locked," she whispered. "I've had enough of locks." The interviewer described her room, soft yellow walls, a single window, sunlight streaming across her face. She flinched at first, but didn't turn away. The final police report concluded with a single line that resonated far beyond the courtroom. This was not a crime hidden by darkness. It was hidden by silence. And that silence, the investigators said, may have been the cruelest prison of all. When the courtroom lights dimmed and the cameras turned away, what remained was not outrage, but silence. The same silence that had protected a crime for 27 years. Świętochłowice went back to its gray rhythm, but every passerby who looked up at that old apartment felt a chill. Evil had not lived in the shadows. It had lived in routine. Psychologists later called the case a mirror of neglect. It wasn't only about two parents losing their minds. It was about everyone else who looked the other way. The neighbor who thought the crying was a TV. The officials who filed papers without knocking on a door. The society that forgot a missing girl because it was easier than asking where she'd gone. Mirella's story became a subject in universities and police academies across Europe, a warning about institutional blindness. Her recovery was slow. She was learning to speak again, to form trust, to stand in sunlight without trembling. One nurse said she liked to sit by the window each morning and trace the clouds with her finger, whispering the names of colors she had once forgotten. "People ask me what freedom feels like," she told a reporter months later. "It feels like air you don't have to steal." The tragedy of Świętochłowice reminds us that prisons are not always built from bars and concrete. Sometimes they are built from fear, obedience, and silence. The quiet complicity of good people doing nothing. So tonight, as you finish this story, ask yourself, would you have heard the cries behind that wall? Would you have cared enough to knock? Thank you for listening to The Woman Locked 27 Years, Poland 2025. If this story moved you, share it, so no one like Mirella is ever forgotten again. Where are you listening from? Home, work, or the road? Tell us in the comments. Your thoughts, your voice, your awareness, they all matter. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Crimes That Shock the World, where we expose the darkness that hides in plain sight and remind the world to never stop looking.